go. All right, recording in progress. Go ahead, Uday. Please introduce yourself to the audience. Anything that I may have missed. We are so glad to have you here, the PMHQ community.
So that was a good high-level summary of my current experience. Um, the only thing I'd add is, in addition to being a platform product manager, I also have product management experience in other domains like enterprise business software as well as consumer software. My consumer software experience comes from a product that I created from a company that I founded. It's called faregrabbr. This is where if you're looking for a good air ticket deals, you can go in and kind of set your own limit price, and if the fare goes below, it will book the ticket for you. I wouldn't go into much detail on that, but my experience with the consumer software, working with the consumers, working on the enterprise product, and working on the platform product has given me a tremendous amount of a, a very wide variety of experiences, and I am excited to share those with you today.
Wonderful. Well, we are glad to have you here. So let's get started. Could you characterize what a typical platform product management role is? What is your typical day like? And by the way, I'm going to turn off my video. This is your show. So we'll be turning off my video. You will be the main star.
Sure. So, if I have to characterize my day as a platform PM or any kind of PM, I think I would say it's very calendar driven. My day revolves around my calendar. I go from meeting to meetings, as dictated by my calendar. So I wake up, and by habit, I just look at my calendar to understand what the day is going to look like. On a typical day, the meetings that I have fall in, I want to say, three buckets. One is, of course, working with the engineering team. And in a platform role, you do so much more than otherwise. And this includes working with developers, QA, architects, SREs, sometimes even. So entire engineering team, like all the different type of folks on the engineering side. These discussions, I would say, revolve around sometimes API contract design, sometimes technical architecture, sometimes troubleshooting, what's going on, reviewing the platform metrics, and trying to figure out what's going on. Usually, I want to say this. My interaction with engineering team takes about 1 to 1.5 hours of my day. And then I have a lot of meeting with external customers. Typically, in a platform role, your audiences are the developers, right? You're building a platform for the developers. Mm-hmm. But I also meet with, in my external customer meetings, I also meet with folks from the product side, folks from their executive team, where I have to, where I am evangelizing the platform benefits and talking about how it's going to help the customers that I build the platform and them achieving their goals. These meetings also sometimes could be discovery, sometimes could be actually working with the external developers to help them model their integration that they're going to be building on top of my platform. And that takes about another 1 to 2 hours. Typically, I have 2 to 3 of these kind of meetings. Then a lot of my time is spent on internal stakeholder meetings. This is where either we have dependency on them or they have dependency on us. So this I want to say takes another 2 to 3 hours. And in my internal stakeholder meetings, I also include the non-technical stakeholders. Like I have to meet with product marketing, I have to meet with the biz dev to make sure that we are positioning the product correctly. So this is something that you would do in any B2B product role. So no different here. Now, in between these meetings, I also find time to review the product KPIs. I have to sometimes work on the user stories. Sometimes I have to work on writing the PRDs, developing the business use cases. Then your typical one-on-ones with peers and the team members, those happen as well. So that's really what my typical day looks like. Like I said, very, very much calendar driven.
Wow, yeah, that sounds like you got your day full of meetings, important stakeholder management, and collaboration. So that brings me to my next obvious question, which is, um, how do you decide who to meet, when to meet? What are some of the frameworks that you have found valuable when it comes to being successful platform product manager? Like, are there any decision-making frameworks? Are there any execution frameworks? Are there any product management frameworks that specifically apply to platform product management that that you would want to share with us?
Sure, sure. So, Dhaval, I would say that for as a platform product manager, you can choose to use almost any product management framework. But I'd focus on a couple of frameworks that have worked well for me in the platform PM role. Um, the first one is the product strategy canvas, and this is where you have you define the vision of the product, you define the actual challenge, which is the big hairy goal that you are trying to achieve, and then you define the uh, so to say target condition, which is you break down the goals in small pieces and make sure those goals are measurable, and then you quantify the current state. One of the reason and setting the vision of the product and the goals are equally important for all kind of product, but platform product management is a little bit unique in that sense, because a lot of times you don't have a ready UI that you can spin up and show that to your stakeholders or audience or anybody else. So your vision is what you spend most of the time evangelizing. So it's really important to have that vision very crisply defined, and then you you set your goals, which are aligned to the vision. And these are something that I think, while applicable in any product management role, becomes a lot more important in the platform role. Um, that's on the strategy side. On the prioritization side, one of the framework that I use very often is the Moscow framework. This is where I categorize my features in must, should, could, or won't. So there are a lot of products that are building on top of you, right? So you have the usual pushes and pulls from the different stakeholders, from your different customers, and you have to decide what are you going to be doing, what's must for your product, and what you won't do. There are certain use cases which, while it appears like API would be a good solution, but there are many reasons you won't want to go there. There could be strategic business reasons because of which you may not want to expose certain capability via API. There could be there could be other reasons like that's doing that is going to bloat your platform. So it's important to have that those wounds identified as uh, as much as you want to identify your must-haves. So that's something that has worked well for me. Uh, those are the things that that I use in my day-to-day decision making. But like I said in the beginning, I think you can almost use any product management framework that that has worked for you, that you are comfortable with.
Yeah, you bring up an important point here, which is platform product management is uh, such an intangible thing, right? You don't really have like a UI that you can show to your stakeholders. I want to go a little deeper there, if you don't mind. How do you communicate your vision? How do you manage your stakeholders when you don't have like a tangible UI that you can show? What has worked for me is building a dashboard of how the platform is performing and using that dashboard as my talking point. But I would love to hear, that's more like, not everybody has the luxury to build a dashboard or have the engineering resources to create like a cool platform analytics dashboard. But I want to hear your thoughts on one, how do you keep communicating your vision to continue to get that buy-in? And then second, how do you continue to influence without having anything tangible? How do you do that? I want to go a little deeper there if you don't mind, please.
No, of course. So, like you said, dashboards are really great tool to communicate the progress, right, that you're making. Um, and But if let's say you don't have the dashboard, you often have to sort of fall back on your uh, consumer's product. So you use what has been built on top of your product to communicate as outcome. So that is what I do all the time. So like I said in the beginning, I manage an API platform product, and I have third parties developing on the APIs. Very often I find myself using their product to showcase the capabilities. Uh, we have a bunch of APIs. If I try to open, let's say, Postman and start showing those APIs to my audience, I can guarantee that within the first minute, people are going to check out, and they're going to just sort of tune out of the meeting, right? So I have to I have to depend on these third party products to actually showcase the capabilities um, and focus on and kind of talk about the outcomes that we as a business are accomplishing or achieving based on this platform. So
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I like that. The storytelling has to revolve around the products that are built on top of your product or your platform, and using those success stories to communicate the success of your platform is a crucial way to get buy-in from your stakeholders. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that. I'm going to use that in my next meeting. Now, this is a question that we have from my friend Claire. She also helped us shape the technical product manager program that we have created at Product Manager HQ. So this is her question here, which is, what are some of the good OKRs and metrics to track for platform products, especially the ones that are pretty far upstream from a visible impact, like building a design system? Do you have any insights on like some OKRs or metrics that you would want to track for a platform product, especially when they're far upstream of you or downstream of you? Any thoughts there?
um, so typically I fall back to the standard metrics, which is adoption, then engagement, retention, and of course monetization. Uh, what the actual attribute that you use to track that metrics would actually depend on what kind of platform you have. Um, if you are managing, let's say, an integration platform, a good indicator of the adoption is number of integrations that are built on top of it. A good indicator of engagement is if, let's say, your platform, API platform is a transactional platform, would be a good, um, is the number of transaction happening through the platform would be a good indicator of engagement. Um, you also kind of can use the product usage, like the product that have been built on top of your platform as a proxy of retention, and how their usage is, you can use as a proxy of retention metrics for your platform product. Monetization is pretty straightforward, right? If it again depends if your what's the strategy for the product. If the strategy is to monetize, then typically it's that's not difficult metrics to track. You should be able to get that information from the data that you have. Either if you don't have that data, you could probably get that information from the finance or your billing team.
Great. Thank you for taking that question. I know we were not going to take questions until after 6, but I'm glad you're able to answer that. Thank you for that. So Uday, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Going back to some of the skills and traits of a successful platform product manager. What are they? If I want to be a superstar platform product manager, how do I become one? What are the skills I should pursue? What are some of the traits I should pursue? Any thoughts there?
That's an important question, and so I believe that platform PM is a role where having tech background actually helps. This is one role where I think having tech background helps. Now, I've seen many developers transitioning into platform PM, but let's say if you don't have a developer background, where you don't code in your day job, you can still transition into the PM role by maybe picking up a side project where you build a real world app and get an understanding of some of the latest trend happening in the tech world. Um, Now, if you are a developer, you can transition into a platform PM role in one of the two ways. One is doing a hard switch. And what I mean by hard switch is you do a MBA, and that's like a hard switch. And once you graduate out of MBA, you kind of apply for roles. You try to look for platform PM roles, if that is what you're interested in. Or you can do a gradual switch. And what I've seen is gradual switch, slow switch, works the best in within your own organization. So you are a developer, you start taking the leadership roles within the team, you'll tag along the PM in customer calls, you enroll in some product management courses like double yours, right? And then slowly transition into the into the platform PM role within your own organization. So that's those are some of the things that I have seen have worked well, or I've seen kind of people making that kind of transition. Now, I'm still hands-on, even though in my day job I don't have to code. I still find coding therapeutic, But most importantly, it helps me be on top of the uh, changes that are happening in the engineering world. So let's say tomorrow I hear something like SNS, AWS's SNS service. Um, I go read it up, and then I kind of see if I can use it in one of my side project, right? And that helps me stay in touch with the technology. That helps me kind of engage in discussions with my engineering team at a somewhat informed basis.
Great.
So
Following up on that, Uday, what you mentioned something very interesting, which is you find coding therapeutic. Let's say if I don't have a technical background, um, how would you recommend someone without a technical background step into the platform PM role? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, just to cover the broad ground here.
of course, of course. So let's say you don't code, and um, you don't have let's say time to learn coding. I think still there are a lot of materials like blog posts where you can really good articles on Medium and other uh, blog uh, blog sites where you can learn about the system design. You can read and understand the the latest buzzword and decrypt them from buzzword to actual what does it mean, and how do you use it, and what is the advantage of using this versus that. So even though I am hands-on, that does not mean that I have uh, worked on every sort of tech stack that is used by my engineering team. But I've read them. If I hear a term, I go and read about it and try to understand what it means. If I have questions, I ask my engineering team to say, "Hey, could you explain this to me?" So that is something that has worked for me. So I wouldn't say. I think being from a dev background helps, but I wouldn't say that's a must-have. It does help, but you can still be a platform PM if you put the effort into understanding the technology, learning about the technology, and that's, I want to say, half of it, platform PM role. The rest half is pure product management, how you make decisions on your product management, how you go about understanding the pain point, how you go about solving those pain points, how you go about prioritizing what problems to solve, how you go about measuring success. That doesn't change.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Um, you know, building on top of that, Uday, I'm curious, what are some of the behavioral traits of a successful platform PM? And how is that different, if it is, than the traditional PM?
Yeah, one of the behavioral trait that comes to mind is listening. You are on both side of uh, of you. They are developers. You work with developers to build a feature. Then your consumers of your product are also developers, right? Developers are very opinionated group, uh, and they think that this is what I need, and this is how it can be solved. So a lot of times you'd face that you would be given solution instead of the actual problem. So I think listening and filtering out the listening and getting to the bottom of why uh, and what the ask is very becomes very important as a PM role. And you, another thing to that I would add to it is uh, you want to listen and not necessarily just if you have an idea, not necessarily just counter with your idea. I think uh, you take the idea that you are getting from your consumer developer group, put it in the list, and try to understand, get to the bottom of what the actual problem that they are trying to solve, and come up with that solution uh, independently after you have heard many of those sort of similar solutions or pain points, right? That's one. The second thing I would say is leading change. Um, you know, API first is still a fairly new concept. The tech industry, API has come into forefront only recently. Companies like Stripe have pioneered it. Uh, Amazon famously said every team you have to have your API, and uh, that is how we're gonna talk internally. So, but it's a fairly new concept, and what that means is many of the stakeholders that you may be working with are still not there in terms of API first thinking. And so you have to be good at leading the chain. You have to be good at evangelizing. You have to be good at promoting your product. You have to be good at explaining the benefits and influencing and creating the awareness even internally with your internal stakeholders. So those are some of the, I would say, those are two top traits that come to mind.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That leads us to the obvious question, which is how do you build trust with your stakeholders? How do you build influence and trust with developers, with other business stakeholders? And you famously said developers are one of the most opinionated people. Any strategies? I agree with that, by the way. Any strategies on how do you build trust and influence with an audience that is pretty difficult to build trust and influence with their to start with they're skeptical, right? So how do you do that? Any thoughts there?
No, absolutely. I think building trust, some of the common things still apply. If you want to build a trust, you say that you're going to do it, and you actually do it, right? That's one of the most. But some of the other things like listening, and then able to speak in their language, able to engage in discussions, and not tune out. That is important. The developers are quick at picking up that you have tuned out. You are not really, as soon as they start on a microservice and start going one level deeper in the tech design. If you tune out, then that's not the best way to try to establish rapport and trust. You want to be able to engage in that discussion. That doesn't mean that you want to design a system with them. That absolutely doesn't mean that. It all that means is when they are explaining the trade-offs, you are able to follow and ask the right questions. And a lot of times you don't think that developers are a group who make magic happen, right? It's so don't set unreasonable deadlines, unreasonable expectations. Those deadlines and expectations should be aligned with the technical complexity of the feature that they may be working on. So that's really what I think, how you build trust with your with the developers and the engineering team that you work with.
Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to the conclusion of this platform product management webinar. Thank you so much, Uday. I appreciate you joining. If we have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. I'm not sure if I set up the Zoom webinar in a way that the the attendees can speak as well. So if you can't speak, raise your hand and I'll unmute you. I'll be happy to have you part of this experience. So please let me know if you want to speak. I'm happy to unmute you. We can have this live conversation or we can chat. So now is the time for questions for Uday. Anyone have any questions for him? All right, we have one question for you. Let me allow Olivia to talk. Go ahead, Olivia. You are unmuted.
Thank you. And sorry if y'all hear my little robot vacuum going in the background. Multitasking. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I am non-technical, looking to get into product management. So I was curious if you could share more about what API first thinking and methodology means.
Of course, of course. So think of a user interface where you have to do X, Y, Z. And typically what you would do is you would go to your backend developers and say, hey, I need to pass X, Y, and Z to for this screen. And after that, I need to display this, and this data on the particular screen. At that point, if the developer gives you the APIs for you to just accomplish that specific task on that screen, I wouldn't call that API first. I would, but instead, if the developer created it in a very generic way, where the same API can be used not only to create that particular screen that I said, but a related screen, a different variation of that screen. That is what I'd call as a API first approach in a very simple terms.
Interesting, thank you. And just to follow up, how you mentioned that can be difficult for people that aren't used to that way of thinking. How does that come up where it's like it's challenging to get people to think in that way versus how they're used to? Yeah.
Right. So typically what the effort required in API, building something API first, the thought and the design work that's required takes some additional time, right? So there is often this expectation from you is, hey, this should just take, all I'm asking is do this, this, and this. So why is it taking so much time, right? And that is where it becomes a little bit more difficult to create the awareness that, hey, what the backend that you are building is not just to keeping in mind your current screen, but it could also be used to actually it could be actually also used to use for you at a future date if you decide to make some changes on the UI. One other thing that I also want to bring up on the platform product management is experimentation in the platform product management is a lot harder. If, let's say, you are a UI product manager, you have a lot of room to experiment. You can run these A/B testings where you can, let's say, change the color of the button and see if that helps you gain a little bit more engagement. That is really hard in the in the platform world. In the platform world, once you have something out and that starts to get consumed, you are tied to it. So in your thinking and your design, long-term becomes a lot more important, because once you have put something out, unwinding them is not as easy. You you have to, if let's say, especially if you have a very large ecosystem, especially if you have a very large number of products that are built on top of your platform. Even if you have one product that's built on top of your platform, you still have to convince the engineering resources from that other product or team, and the PMs of that other product and team, to make the corresponding change. If you have to make a breaking change, which as a matter of philosophy, you shouldn't be doing between versions. So that's where designing it in a way where it's where you're taking an API first approach, not just looking at, not just having a very short-term view of this is what this UI needs. So this is what I need to build the API. This is how I need to design the API. So that's where that comes in picture.
Thank you, Uday. I appreciate that. Thank you, Olivia. I appreciate the question. Those were really good questions. All right, with that, we're going to conclude the webinar. I really appreciate everyone being here. Thank you for being part of this experience. We're going to continue to have these webinars with people from our community, and we'll share the knowledge. Hopefully, pretty soon we'll have in-person events in San Francisco as well as in San Diego. So looking forward to that. And thank you, Uday. You really shared generously, and I appreciate the time and energy you took to be with us today. And looking forward to have this conversation with you once again in the future. Cheers.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.